I've been thinking a lot about cognitive dissonance and how gossip plays into it. Specifically, I've been paying a lot of attention recently to the way that people talk about other people when they're not present. And I started to wonder a few things. First of all, is gossip kind of inevitable in interpersonal relationships? How do people make sense of the cognitive dissonance they experience when they're gossiping about someone? What is a healthy approach to gossip and cognitive dissonance? And how does all of this fall into play from a Jungian perspective? So today I'm going to tell you what I came up with. I'm Anna Uden. I'm a doctor of clinical psychology, but also a fiction author. Check out my witchy book, The Curse in Their Veins, down below if you'd like to read it this fall. And let's get into it. So starting off with cognitive dissonance. If you're not aware, cognitive dissonance is when your belief about who you are as a person contradicts your behavior. So an example of this would be you see yourself as a kind person, and yet you often gossip about people. And then when I was reflecting on cognitive dissonance and gossip, I thought, okay, but how would this fall into a Jungian approach? Because a Jungian approach considers that we are made up of contradictions. The totality of the self is not just the persona that we portray, but also our shadow self, which is the exact opposite of everything we value. But then I figured it out. I figured out how cognitive dissonance can still be unhealthy, even from a Jungian point of view. So let me show you what I mean with some diagrams. All right, so here's the personality structure of a healthy person per a Jungian perspective. You have the self, which is the totality of everything. The persona, meaning who you portray yourself to be, who is aligned with your values, and also the shadow self, which is a personification of the exact opposite of all of that. Everything that you wish not to be. Now, this part isn't Jungian, this part I added myself. I think that in a healthy personality, you have public and private sectors of the persona. You have who you are in public, in work meetings, in school, in group settings. And then you have who you are privately, who you are with family, who you are when nobody is watching, who you are when you're on anonymous forums. And I think that in a healthy personality, both the public and the private persona are, for the most part, aligned with the persona itself. And then there are little bits here that are more aligned with the shadow self, that occasionally get submerged. Basically, when you act not quite like your best self, not quite like who you want to be. For example, let's say that you are a person who values kindness. Your persona is kind. That means that your shadow self is very cruel. Publicly, for the most part, you might be kind, but there might be some times where publicly you're not so kind. Like maybe you speak disrespectfully to somebody who's pissed you off during a presentation or something of that nature. Privately, same thing. For the most part, you're a kind person. You're kind to your family, you're kind to the people you interact with one-on-one, and occasionally there are times where you slip up, where you're the exact opposite of that, like when you lose your temper with someone. Now let's have a look at what this looks like when somebody is completely taken up by gossiping. This is what it looks like. You still have the totality of the self, which is comprised of the persona and the shadow self. But who you are in public is always aligned with the persona, and who you are in private is always aligned with the shadow self. Public self is up here, up top in the light part, the values aligned part, and the private self is complete opposite of that. Your private self is completely submerged in the shadow self. So for example, in public, you're the sweetest, kindest, most friendly person, and in private, you speak so cruelly about people they would not believe it if they heard it. And that, my friend, is cognitive dissonance. Who you are in public and who you are in private are split up based on the persona and the shadow self. Now, something that I know a lot of you struggle with is feeling unproductive. And that can also be a cognitive dissonance in and of itself. If you consider yourself to be a productive person or somebody that is competent, and yet you often struggle behaviorally to put that into practice. So this is where I'd like to thank the sponsor of today's video, Akiflow. Akiflow is a time-blocking platform that streamlines your task scheduling, maximizes productivity, and minimizes procrastination. It allows you to easily consolidate all of your tools in one spot. You have your calendar there in Akiflow, and then you also have your integrations that are linked to it, things like Gmail, Slack, Zoom. So all of your appointments, everything that you need to use just automatically goes there. And of course, it also has has task blocking. So you can block off time in your calendar for these different tasks. You can either drag it in or you can just put it straight in the calendar. It's a really intuitive interface. Everything is very easily modifiable, even for somebody who's not super tech savvy like myself. You can also easily organize tasks into labels or tags. And recently there's a new feature using AI that automatically assigns your tasks to projects, which is pretty cool. And if it's incorrect, it's easily modifiable. Also, another really cool feature is the statistics feature, where it shows you how you're using your time day after day, how you could be more efficient, maybe what you're spending more time versus less time on. This is a component of productivity and efficiency that I think is really important for everyone to master, is to self-reflect on how things are going and how you can be further streamlined in your process. You can also prioritize certain tasks to keep them at the forefront of your day, which I think is super important to kind of keep in mind, like, what is the thing that I'm really focusing on today? And there's also a rituals button where you can look back on the previous day and look forward towards the next day. And you also get an onboarding call and one-on-one productivity coaching. So if this sounds like your cup of tea, check out Akiflow using the link below. Thank you so much to Akiflow. So going back to the idea of cognitive dissonance and gossip, how does gossip play into this? Like I said, gossip submerges the private self into the shadow self and keeps the public self in the persona. So then you get that cognitive dissonance about who I am privately and who I am publicly are in complete contradiction. One is aligned with my values, and the other is the complete opposite, not aligned whatsoever. So what does research say about gossip? Some researchers have argued that gossip is essential for the development and maintenance of social groups. And when I hear this, I feel very conflicted, because on one hand, I see how rampant gossip is for people, and I'm tempted to agree that maybe it is something intrinsic about the way we socialize that maybe serves a function. But on the other hand, when I also see the pain that it causes, I struggle with that, and I struggle to see it as something ethical. And I'm reminded that just because something is common or normalized doesn't mean that it's kind or that we should keep doing it. The functions of gossip are to influence others, to provide information, to provide entertainment, to serve as social glue, or sometimes just because you're bored. So to influence others. You know, if you had a bad experience with one friend and you go to another friend and you tell them about it, that might be for the purpose of triangulating those two people. Or if your friend is about to go out with someone that you happen to know some concerning information about, you might be trying to just relay that information and say, hey, listen, careful, because I heard this about this person. Sometimes it is just for entertainment or just out of boredom. Gossip can be fun for people and entertaining for people. And so when you do it, you're kind of like the jester. You know, you get to be the one providing catharsis for the group. And yes, it also serves as social glue, because one of the strongest ways of bonding an in-group is to ally against someone from the out-group. It's messed up, but that's how it goes. And also another big reason why we gossip that's more psychological rather than sociological is we want to make ourselves feel better about our insecurities. The people who gossip the most are often the most insecure. Why is this? Because they're trying to make themselves feel better about their lives. So they are pointing fingers, going, look over there, look how terrible that person is, look at their choices, look how laughable they are. Do you know the saying? When you're pointing one finger, you got 4 others pointing back at you. You're trying to validate that you're so much better. Your life is so much better than that person that you're talking ill of. For example, couples who often compare themselves with other couples tend to be more insecure because they would rather not talk about what's actually problematic in their own relationship. They would rather just pass judgment on other couples and the way that they do things. And the last reason why people gossip is that gossip feels good. It releases happy neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. These are like drugs in our brain. We can get addicted to them. Interestingly, though, the jury's still out on the research as to whether gossiping is actually effective in getting people to like you. Does it glue social groups? Yes. Is it entertaining? Yes. But some research suggests that the people who gossip are actually disliked more by people in the group. And this is the crazy part. Even when they're gossiping nicely, even when somebody is sharing something positive about another person's life. Other research disagrees. Other research says that the people who gossip the most are seen as the most central to the group. But I feel like we can kind of agree that, like, people who gossip a lot, we can never really fully trust them, and therefore how can we fully like them? Because we're always going to be wondering, what is this person saying about me behind my back? I remember a while ago I was interacting with someone, and I noticed that this person could be pretty, gossipy about everyone that they were speaking to me about. And I decided, let me run a little bit of an experiment. After this person introduced me to like their best friend, when the two of us were alone, I said something along the lines of, oh, like your friend is so cool. Like I thought they were great. Can you guess what came immediately afterwards? Speaking ill of their best friend, completely unprompted. All I had said was, your friend is so cool. That to me was the nail in the coffin. That to me was like, okay, this person cannot be trusted. If they're speaking this way about one of their closest friends, they're most definitely speaking this way about me behind my back. And regardless of whether gossipers tend to be liked more or less by others in their group, some studies found that gossiping not only decreases the self-esteem of the person they're gossiping about, like duh, that's obvious, it also decreases the self-esteem of the person doing the gossiping. And this particular researcher said, oh, it's probably because they know that other people judge gossipers more harshly, and they probably feel insecure about that. I don't know that that's it. I think it's more about cognitive dissonance, because the relationship between cognitive dissonance and self-esteem is that when you have very strong cognitive dissonance, your self-esteem goes down. Your self-esteem tends to go up when both your public and private self are more aligned with your persona, with your values, and less aligned with your shadow self. And also when you can have compassion for your shadow self. But a person whose entire private self is submerged in their shadow self is going to have a lot of cognitive dissonance and is going to struggle with self-esteem. So what is the solution to all of this? Like, what is a healthy approach to gossip? Because there's no way we can avoid it in day-to-day life. So we need to decide for ourselves how to manage it in a way that doesn't damage our self-esteem and also the people around us. I think there are two solutions. Number one, either don't say or do anything behind closed doors that you wouldn't say or do publicly, or be prepared to say publicly or do publicly what you say or do behind closed doors, right? Either one works. Either one works in terms of minimizing cognitive dissonance. If you're going to be super mean and gossipy behind closed doors, you need to be able to say it with your chest to a person's face. Because otherwise you come across as two-faced, fake, inauthentic, especially if you're putting on like this very sweet, friendly, charismatic front to people's faces, and behind closed doors you are the complete opposite. Or if you're not brave enough and bold enough to just say it to a person's face, then don't say it at all. Don't say it behind closed doors either. There you have it. It's pretty simple. That's how to minimize cognitive dissonance when dealing with gossip. I'm really curious which of these routes you prefer to take. And I'm also really curious about your approach to gossip in general, because like I said, I feel like it's so rampant in modern society that I just really need to know like how people are grappling with this. So let me know down in the comments, and I'll see you soon.